Never open the door if somebody knocks in the middle of the night. So I did my hair, did not think I was gonna have to do my earrings hair. I, for the life of me, cannot make the hair stay like this. I guess because it was folded in the packaging. So the hole is their ear. So like, am I their earrings, or like, are they my earrings? I'm so confused right now. So this girl in the story is really young. She's about 13 or 14 years old, and she explains that she never really believed in the paranormal. A ghost staying in a home and haunting it, or like a witch flying in the middle of the night, just seemed unbelievable to her. She does say that whenever she would hear paranormal stories, she would never be like, oh, I don't believe you. She would listen and just don't make a judgment on it. However, she just herself felt like it wasn't real. Of course, that all changed. So she's from Guadalajara, and her grandparents live in Guanajuato. She explains that they live in like a little town, and anytime they want to go on vacation, it's like a 2-hour ride, but they go and visit their grandparents. So this actually recently happened last year, and she said that it was her parents, her brother, and her, and they decided to take like a week vacation to go visit their grandparents in Guanajuato. Once they entered their grandparents' little town, they actually bumped into her uncle. Her parents got out of the car, went to go talk to them, and they were like almost whispering something to each other that she couldn't hear. She says that once her parents get in the car, they look very tense, but they don't say anything to her or her sibling. They end up just driving up and getting to the grandparents' home and going inside. After being inside for a little bit and their grandparents greeting them, she had an opportunity where her and her mom were alone together. She turns to her mom and she's like, hey, I feel like you're hiding something from me. Can you just tell me what happened? You look really weird. The mom looks around and sees that the brother was a little close to them, so she's like, let's go to the room and I'll explain everything to you. The mom explains that for the past few months, the zone where they were at was getting very dangerous, and that 6 people have been ended, and it was right in front of their grandparents' home. 2 of the 6 people that were ended were children. The mom explains to her that she's not gonna allow them to be outside by themselves, and actually the only reason she's telling her what happened is because she's gonna need her help maintaining her little sibling and their younger son inside the house, or just keep eyes on him at all times. After having that conversation with her mom, she obviously agreed to take care of her younger brother, and everybody went to the living room and they were all just talking. It was around 1 in the morning. They were still in the living room, and all of a sudden they hear somebody knocking on the front door. Because of the time, everybody just stayed very quiet, looking at each other like, who could this be? Her mom immediately gets up, goes to the room because her sibling was asleep already. She just wants to make sure he's still in there, and he is. When they initially heard the first knock, somebody had knocked 3 times. So the uncle, after a little bit that nobody was moving, gets up and decides that he's gonna go towards the front door. Right before he gets to the door, there's another 3 knocks. So the uncle actually opens the door a little bit, and there's nobody on the other side of the door, so he immediately closes it and locks it again. They all go to bed. The following day, it's nighttime again. They're in the living room talking again, and again at the same time they hear 3 knocks at the front door. The uncle checked again, there's nobody again, and they just decided to call it a night and go to bed. The following night they were all already in their bedrooms going to bed when they all heard knockings on the front door, but this time nobody decided to get up. They all ignored it and they just went to sleep. And again, the same thing happened the next night. This time they were all awake again in the living room just talking, and her uncle came up with a plan. He had a feeling that whoever knocked was gonna knock again if nobody answered the door, so this time he kind of hid himself right next to the door, and he said the second they were about to knock 3 times again, he was gonna open that door and catch whoever was doing it. And he was right, because by the time they knocked again 3 times, he swings open that door to catch whoever it was, and nobody was there. Everyone was shocked that there was nobody at the door because they just heard the knock like seconds ago, so somebody should have been there. The uncle looks at them and he's like, I promise you there's nobody. He even walks out, goes to the street to look if maybe somebody ran, and he sees no one out there. Her dad ends up going outside too, and he says that there's nobody out there. He didn't even see anybody in the streets either. So they came up with a plan for the following night. They all thought somebody was playing a prank, so they wanted to catch whoever the person was. Even though they weren't allowed to go in the street, there was children allowed to be out late at night, and maybe it could be them. So 20 minutes before 1 a.m., the uncle decides to go outside. Right next to the door there is a big bush, and he was gonna hide there so that he could see who was knocking on the door. Now her dad was gonna be inside right next to the door so that they both could at least have a chance at catching who this person was. They both agreed that once they heard the knock, the uncle that was inside was gonna open the door immediately, and the uncle on the outside was gonna jump out at whoever it was. So 1 a.m. comes, and there's definitely knocks at the front door. So the dad that was inside opens the door, sees the uncle standing there that was outside hiding, and they were like, well, who was it? Neither of them saw anyone at the front door knocking. The uncle that had been hiding outside actually thought that her dad was playing a prank on him. He was like, well, you knocked so that I can come out, it's you. But everybody that was inside attested to the fact that they never saw the man knock on the door. However, somebody definitely knocked on the door. The uncle that was hiding outside promised that he never knocked, and the dad that was inside also said he didn't knock. She was trying to understand everything, and she was like, what if it was like sounds from another house and we just thought it sounded like a knock on the front door? She was like, what if there was an animal? What if, the temperature changes and creates these weird sounds? Because in her mind, she's like, this is not paranormal. Like, it's something else. It's something that can be explained, but we just can't figure it out yet. So they're in like their last few days of staying there with their grandparents, and she says that she's in the living room with her grandmother. They're organizing some stuff that she didn't want anymore, she was gonna throw out, but time got the better of them and they had no idea that it was already 1 a.m. They were so busy gossiping and organizing that when the 3 knocks came, they both just stayed in shock. She says that her grandmother looked at her and said, like, let's go to the next room, do not talk, like, let's be very quiet. So as she's about to follow her grandmother, something stopped her dead in her tracks. She saw when her grandmother was walking to like this second living room area that they had where her dad and uncle were in, but she stayed very still because she heard a voice coming from the front door. She hears,
please open the door, please help me, please.
When she turns back to where her grandmother had turned, she notices that her grandmother had came back for her, and she thinks that the grandmother also heard the voice because they both looked at each other very much scared. And the voice came again.
Please open the door, please help me.
She explains that her grandmother was frozen this time, so she just grabbed her grandmother by the hand and pulled her towards that second living room to where her dad and uncle were. So she walks in there with grandmother in hand, tells her dad and uncle what they just heard. They both jolt up, go to the front door, they go outside, and there is nobody out there. When they came back in, they started asking them like, what did you hear, what happened? And both her and her grandmother were telling them the same thing. The grandmother also told them that she did not recognize that voice, which is weird because everybody knows everyone in that small town. The following day, the grandmother actually went to her neighbor's house to see if maybe they were having these same experiences. However, they said that they weren't. She went to the neighbor after her neighbor's house, and they said that they were also hearing knockings in their front door at 1 a.m. However, they explained to her that they were not opening that door. They never even checked. They were not about to open the door at that time for anybody. They also tell the grandmother, look, if it's a ghost, if it's a human, you do not open that door for anybody at that time. Just ignore it. She says that the last night they were going to spend with their grandparents, nobody wanted to be in the living room anymore. Everybody was in bed before 1 a.m. So she says that she wasn't asleep yet. Nobody was, but they were in their bedrooms, and that's when her mom asked if she can go to the living room and grab something that she needed. Because it was only 12 and not 1, she was like, okay, yeah, let me go get what you needed, and she was very confident that nothing scary was gonna happen. So as she walks into the living room, she starts to hear like people talking outside of the front door, but she thought maybe it was just people in the street walking by. It wasn't 1 o'clock just yet, but those like murmurs, the talking just changed into somebody crying hysterically outside of that front door. She stayed in shock to the point where she could no longer move. Like, she wanted to run away from that living room and she couldn't. She kept hearing the cries get like worse and worse, and by the time she knew it, she had screamed so loud, and the first person that got to the living room was her mom. As soon as her mom grabs her, she just starts crying uncontrollably. When she finally calmed down a little bit, she told her mom that she started to hear crying outside the front door, but then the crying started to be right next to her in that living room. However, she would look around and there was no one in the living room with her. She did end up going to bed and going to sleep. She explains that she was so drained and that she didn't even want to wait until 1 a.m. to see what would happen next. The following morning, she said that they were all having breakfast and she was listening to all the adults talk about, the knockings on the door. She said that she overheard when her uncle and the grandmother said that there were knockings and voices coming from the front door at 1 a.m, but that nobody wanted to come out and see what or who that was. She said that day they returned back to their hometown and she just wanted to forget about that experience at her grandparents' home. However, she said that recently she had talked to her grandmother over the phone, and her grandmother tells her that they are still hearing knocks and like voices outside the door even today. Her grandmother told her that they already have a priest coming to bless the homes in that neighborhood in hopes that the knockings and the voices and the cries go away. She explains that she doesn't know if maybe these are the souls of the people who had just passed away in front of her grandmother's home or what it could be, but that she really hopes they go away by the time she has to go visit her grandparents' house again. I don't even know why they would open that door the first time. My mom, my aunts who live next to my mom are always like, if you didn't invite somebody, if you're not expecting visit, do not open the door. Well, in our case, do not open the window. So in my mom's house, we always hear knocks on the windows at night, and my aunts live right next door to my mom. They also hear knockings on the windows. So all of them have told like my cousins, obviously, and my mom tells us, if you're not expecting anybody, do not open that window. And if you've been following me for a really long time, you know that my little brother has captured that video of somebody knocking on his window and unexpectedly seeing that like little thing in the window, and it almost looks like a hand knocking on, I don't know, but like, yeah, when I used to stay there, because I lived in Austin and I would come visit, I would take sleeping pills because no one's waking me up. Now that I live here, thankfully I don't have to spend the night there. I do miss it though. I do miss staying the night, and because me and my brother used to stay up all night watching scary movies and like hearing weird sounds and investigating. Anyway, what do you guys think? Obviously, do not open the door if you're not expecting anybody, but thankfully now we have Ring cameras, so no, because now I'm like, if somebody rings my door and then there's no one there,